Hi, my name's Tom, married to Naomi, and we've got 3 children. We've got Elijah, who's 7, about to turn 8, Zach, who's just turned 6, and then Mila, who's 16 months. I was born in Nottingham, but spent the majority of my life in Lincoln. I moved here when I was about 2 years old. We lived in a village locally called Dunstan, and then I went to local secondary school here as well, and before going into Lincoln University as well, so I've always stayed within the city. I studied law at Lincoln University, but then from a career path I just went slightly different, and I spent the majority of my working life in finance. It's always been around the business side of things, which I really enjoy. So I kind of help businesses obtain funding to buy new premises. We do a lot at the minute for dentists and pharmacists who are looking to buy their new practices. So it gives me a real sense of value just being able to get involved in those processes and being able to support people in what they're looking to do and achieve their ambitions from a working point of view. So it's really great to be involved and kind of couples some of my what I feel and the values from a church side of things and from my faith into work in terms of helping others and supporting others as well, which is really a really nice thing to be able to do. I always feel like I had a very nice upbringing, kind of really happy childhood, 2 parents who loved me and kind of living together as a family, had a really good friendship network and everything like that. I look back now and I always think there was something I was searching for, and it kind of always feels like there was always something that possibly was missing. I think it's difficult to kind of pinpoint exactly what it was, but there's just that sense of belonging probably, and just that sense of kind of the bigger picture. And it seems strange to think, and I kind of, if I'm honest, I see it now in some of the questions that the boys ask me, but it's just kind of thinking about what else is there kind of beyond where we are now. Kind of always that feeling of this can't be it, there has to be more to where we are and to why we're here. And I think that is something that I kind of felt got addressed when I gave my life to Jesus. It was really through my wife, now wife Naomi. When we were speaking with each other, I think she always made it very obvious in terms of how her faith was so important to her, and in terms of how much it meant to her, and kind of just through asking some questions and getting to know a bit more about it and what it was like, it just intrigued me more and more, to the point where I wanted to find out a little bit more about it for myself. I think when she mentioned about, at the time when we were talking, she mentioned about this event called, I think it was Grapevine at the time. When she mentioned it, I just went onto my laptop that evening and just had a quick look in terms of what it was about, and saw a few of the speakers on there, and just started to then explore on some YouTube videos and started to listen to what people were saying, and it just one of those moments where everything just seemed to make sense. And kind of you often hear about stories where people say someone was speaking and it felt like they were speaking personally to them, and there was just a number of occasions where, just in those moments where I was looking at some of these videos, where I was like, wow, yeah, that really means something to me, and that kind of makes sense, and it kind of feels like that might be something that I want to find out a bit more about. So I just went along myself to Grapevine and just got a chance to sit and listen to some speakers there, and it was Roy Todd actually who was speaking in the main service that evening. And I just remember I would class myself as more of an introvert, and I remember there was a call kind of to come to the front if anyone wanted to give themselves to Jesus, and I just remember being sat there with my eyes closed and head down, and it was kind of just put your hand up in the air if you want to come forward. And I kind of didn't expect it, but just found my hand going up, and then next thing I knew I was at the front amongst kind of probably another 100 people or so, and being prayed for there. And it just felt such a natural thing to do. It never felt strange at any point. It just felt like it was the right thing to do at the right time. And I just look back and I think that was just the culmination of a number of things that have happened to me in the past, and the kind of influences that have been there. What I did find out from my dad not long ago is that he did go to church when he was younger. So he grew up in Manchester, and then he moved to Wales, North Wales, with his family at the time, and he kind of opened up to me and told me how he used to go to church when he was younger and with his dad, and his dad was a real firm follower of Jesus, and how I never met his dad, he passed away before I was born, but he told me how his dad had given him his Bible And him and his dad used to regularly go, and his dad used to be praying every night as well for the family. And I kind of feel there must be some of an influence there that has been passed through. And there's that story that that kind of plan that God had as well. And I'd like to think that's had some influence over where I am as well. And again, those unheard prayers that I never heard, but I like to think that he was probably praying over my dad and over his family as well, that there'll be these moments in the future where kind of someone in the family would come back to faith and kind of follow Jesus as well, and the impact that can have. And I like to think that now that's something I can certainly pass on to my 3 children, and certainly something that me and Amy kind of really want to place as a core in our family. It's funny how people often say kind of when you come to faith, don't expect that it's going to be easy. And I would say these last 12 years there's been some of the best highs, but there's also been some of the biggest challenges in my life as well. But I look back on them and I always say to people, like, if it wasn't for Jesus and it wasn't for my faith, I don't know how I'd have got through some of those moments. Naomi's parents, so William and Alison, again, William was a pastor of our church, and Alison was very involved in the leadership of the church as well as running the kids' work. And sadly, William suffered from cancer and passed away shortly afterwards. And then a couple of years later, completely out of the blue, we also found out that Alison had cancer, and she then passed away a few months later. And it was virtually a couple of years to the day between the two of them. In between both times, when William had cancer, Naomi was pregnant with Elijah, and then when we found out about Alison having cancer, Naomi was pregnant again with Zach. So we had these kind of the joy from having the knowledge that we had Elijah and Zach on the way, but the absolute kind of tragedy of what's happening with William and Alison and how devastating that was, and to have to go through it again so closely, and kind of how that impacted on the family. And I look back now, and they were probably the first 2 times where I've ever really experienced loss. And I look back at those periods, and I don't know what I'd have done without Jesus as us as a family. The knowledge of where they'd gone to, the knowledge that they were now with Jesus, the knowledge that we had church family around us praying for us the whole time and supporting us, and just the peace that was felt actually at the time what should have been, and I think most of us would see it as a moment of sadness. Actually, there was a real peace about it. And then one thing that a lot of people said to me, because we had some of my parents and family who came to the celebration service, both William and Alison, and we had some friends that kind of came along as well that we weren't aware of at the time, but they kind of came and sat in the background at the celebration services for their lives. That people would say, I've never experienced something like that, where it was kind of the room was filled with more joy than sadness. I think there was moments of sadness and grief, but actually it was mainly joy in terms of the life that they lived and the impact they had, but also the knowledge of where they've gone as well. So I think without kind of, a lot of people have commented that how I kind of see why your faith can have such an impact, and kind of the amount of questions that kind of came on the back of that, because people saw how we got through those moments, and it was only because of Jesus and just the knowledge that he was there and the rock supporting us during that period. I had a relatively serious incident that happened at work for me at the time. I'm kind of quite secure in my role and at work, and something quite unexpectedly happened, which resulted in me having to leave the role that I was in at the time. And it was so unexpected and so sudden. And again, actually looking back, it was only a short period of time after Alison had passed away. And I know at the time we were dealing with a lot of stuff with the estate and everything like that. So there's lots of other things going on. And then for that to happen as well at that point, it just felt like another attack, in feeling, gosh, where is this going to end? Kind of, there's more things coming our way. But again, whilst there was moments of real challenge, I remember coming back and kind of talking to Naomi about it, and how supportive she was, and how that really actually brought us really close to Jesus in terms of praying, and how we just had to rely on him at that time just to provide for us and just to support us. And the way that I look back now and see how he did get us through that period, and there were some really low moments for that for me personally, but again, the way that people came around us, the way that people prayed for us, the way that I look back now, and God provided for us financially during that time and kept things going, maintained things, because there was all sorts of things going through my head at that time in terms of how we'll cope because of what had happened. And but it just, without God, kind of, I just would not have got through that period. And that's probably where my relationship with Jesus became the absolute closest it had ever been, because I had to have that moment where I really was at the rock bottom. I had to rely on him. It's kind of, there was nothing else to rely on but Jesus at the time, and the way he brought me through. And I think that's the closest I've ever felt. And from there, my relationship with him has never been stronger, because I just had to rely on him so much during that period. And I remember it was Rebecca who sent me a worship song at the time, which is called "This Is How I Fight My Battles," and I remember just playing that on loop at the time, and kind of just having worship music constantly around me, regular prayer and everything like that. And it wasn't actually, what happened never became as bad as kind of my thoughts thought it might be. Very quickly went into a new role, which was better than anything I'd had before. And just really the people that supported me around me at the time. And actually the valley in that case was actually not as low as I thought it was going to be. And then since then, it's kind of that God has really brought me through that period. But again, without my faith, I just don't know how I would have got through that time. There was some real lows, but also some highs and kind of things that have been spoken over us. It was prophesied over us that we were going to have a baby, and she would be a sunshine in a really dark time. A few years later, that's when Mila was born. She was born last year, and we kind of look back, and actually with all those things that I mentioned about there that I'd been through with my job and with both of Naomi's parents, but actually also she was born after COVID. Looking back, as again, we just see that she is a real answer to that prophecy, because of a number of kind of dark times in that period. And we look at her now and kind of the joy she brings us, and the personality that she's got, and it just shows you that what God had promised over us has come to fruition as well. If I kind of look back now, if I was kind of like if I could talk to myself now from where I was in 2010, kind of when I first made that decision to follow Jesus, it kind of, what I always think about, what would I say to me then in terms of what's to come. And I think crucially, kind of, I think from the start, just get yourself involved in the Word, kind of just dive into the Word as much as you can, just get into that kind of that regular time of reading the Bible. I think it's so crucial just to get involved in the Bible, kind of get yourself really confident in the Word of God, but also surround yourself. I think that's the key, is to surround yourself with the right people, get involved in things within church. We've got family groups now that you can get involved in. I think it's really great to sign up to one of those, so that you can, again, regularly not treat church as just being a Sunday morning. It's kind of throughout the week as well, where you can have that input through in the middle of the week, where you can just, in a smaller group, just be around people, where you can go into a little bit more detail in terms of the questions that you got, or a Bible study, but you can also pray for each other and worship together, and just get used to doing that within the smaller group environment and build those relationships as well. Also, from a challenges point of view, I think be aware that just by following Jesus, things aren't going to be simple. Your challenges aren't going to go away, and there will be moments where you might fall, or you might stumble, you might take a step back, or things will happen to you that could really knock you. And I think the easiest thing in those situations would probably be to give in, or to go back to your old ways, or to shift. So I think it's in those moments, that's the time when you need to pull closer to God, at those periods of time, just to pull closer into your faith, get more into the Bible, pray more, worship more, get closer to people, kind of be open with people around you, and ask for prayer in those situations as well when you're going through it. Don't kind of hide it or keep it in yourself either. And I think those are the times when I would say just expect that there will be challenges along the way, but in those moments, kind of, that's when you get closer to God, and that's where you'll build your relationship and make it stronger with him at that time as well. So I think it's just being aware that those will come, but just don't allow that to shake your faith or kind of knock you back when that does happen.